Hi friends, I'm Shauna. Welcome to the channel and welcome to a new video. Today's video is long overdue and I'm going to be talking about my plan of action for how I'm going to be tackling my last remaining problem spending area. I personally feel like all of us who have been over shoppers, over consumers at some point in time have that one category that's just the hardest to get rid of, the hardest to tackle. That's been like your problem category. Sure, all these years I've overspent in a lot of areas and I've had many categories that have been problems, but I have this one that's been like the kryptonite. That's been the one category that hasn't changed when everything else has kind of headed in the good direction. And that's clothing for me. I've just been making so many good choices over the last 3 years, and my, direction of my spending has just been going up. And I don't want to say that my clothing spending hasn't changed at all. It has certainly improved, but it definitely has not changed as much as basically every other category. And it kind of feels like the last vestige of a different life, of my former spending life. Well, I've changed as a person a lot over the last couple of years. My spending now is dramatically different. If it was a person, it would have had its glow up, It's dramatically different from 3 years ago, pre-No Buy life. I'm ready to finally shed that last kind of hangers on. I'm ready to ditch it. I'm ready for that complete overhaul. I'm ready for it. And it's kind of long overdue. So I'm going to be talking about why this has been such a trouble area for me and how I plan to really shift my spending in this category. And I'll give you my plan of action. So those will be our two main topics of conversation for this video. Before we get into it though, I want to take this moment to talk about my membership for just a hot second. I've recently updated my membership, so all of my members now get access to Project Pan updates before they go live, so they get early access. And all of the channel bestie members, so the top tier option, they get access to my entire Notion template library with their membership. It's already been linked. These changes have already been made. And if you sign up for that tier, then you get all those resources and any resource that gets created for the future. So all my members already have access to this, and that link gets updated whenever I decide to create new resources. Members will they'll get that access, and that's lifetime, really. So if you would like to join the membership, get access to these great perks and many others, I would really love to have you here. Membership starts at just $1.99. Thank you so much to my current members. I appreciate you all so much. I really appreciate the heck out of you, so thank you. Oh, also, I did a little press-on manicure with one of my last remaining sets. I was talking about it in a recent video that I was thinking about maybe playing for some on Low by Mango. I still could if I wanted to, but I still have a couple of sets that I can use. So I always feel, as I was saying, I took my own advice and just put them on because I was saying how much, how cute I feel with them. So yay for that. All right. So why has shopping been the problem category for me? Overall, the number one reason is that shopping has been a coping mechanism for me. And it's often been shopping for clothes has kind of been that main category that I've used for coping shopping. In the last 2 years in specific though, it's been almost exclusively clothes. I have, coping shopped for other things. Historically, when you look at the last 5-6 years, it's primarily been clothes, but in the last 2 years in specific, we're talking 90%, if not more. And I feel like the reason that I've gone for clothes over other categories is because with something like makeup, if you want to get the look of something, you don't necessarily need that product. Would you know what blush I'm wearing if it's Natasha Denona, Tarte, or Maybelline? No. And you can replicate other people's looks much more easily with makeup than you can with fashion. And then also when it comes to other things, I just feel like, I haven't overshopped for books because I've really used the library. Haven't really shopped for home decor because I haven't really had my own place until the last year. So it makes sense to me why clothing was the choice. And, when it comes to fast fashion, I primarily shopped fast fashion in the past, and you can buy fast fashion at low prices. So you could spend like $100 at, I don't know, Old Navy or H&M as an example, and you can get a handful of things. So there was that component as well. Makeup also expires, clothing doesn't. So you could, have a piece of clothing sit in your closet for 5 years, never use it, and then, 5 years later pull it out and start wearing it. But also I think our expectations with makeup and clothing are a little bit different. Like the primary way, historically speaking as well, that I've gotten rid of clothes has been through decluttering. So it's kind of in the back of my mind, like I'm not buying this thing forever. Or even to use it up, like you don't use up your clothing like you do makeup, and so your clothing doesn't expire either. So I do think that I've had somewhat of a problematic view of my clothes in the past than now. This isn't the time or the place to talk about fast fashion or get into necessarily all the nitty-gritty details about the problem of the clothing industry. But my perspective on clothing has shifted a lot over the last 3 years, and even, not just being more intentional about the clothing that I've been buying, but also why I'm buying it is coming more into play than ever before. I guess the question could really be, well, if you're shopping more intentionally, then, how is this still a problem? And as I was mentioning, it's not the problem that it used to be, but I've gone into Poshmark and what has happened now is majority of my problem spending has been on Poshmark, because you can, spend $20 and get that dopamine hit. And, it's kind of like price point wise, like how much you could spend per transaction is similar to fast fashion without it being fast fashion. And there's definitely been some embarrassment there about still kind of having this problem area with clothing while also being somebody who's really advocated for conscious consumerism and really, I really do believe those tenets in my heart. And I think I've just really given myself a pass over the last 2 years with clothing. And something from Mia said from Mia's Virtual Vanity is like, when everything in your life is kind of in shit, and you're trying to take care of multiple categories in your life. Like you're trying to take care of your shopping and your mental health and your school and your home and your education. And like, you have all of these things that you're really trying to rein in, you're really trying to change, that leaving one area just kind of alone to like be what it is. Like you can't control it all. And I think that has really been what's happened here. I've been changing so much over the last 3 years. It's kind of wild where I am now compared to 3 years ago. Like just about everything in my life has changed. Not everything, of course, but a lot has changed. And so I think I've just really given myself a pass when it comes to clothing shopping. And it does feel good to shop in that way and get that dopamine hit and, use it as a distraction when I'm feeling like garbage or when I'm in my feels about something. It does have that release feeling, but it's very temporary. I've learned recently that coping mechanisms are habits, but they are also the most difficult habits to change because they are our response to stress. Even if it's emotionally, it's still like emotional stress. And so if you don't swap out your coping mechanism with something else, you're just leaving yourself with the stress and no way to deal with it or release from it. And that kind of has been what is happening is I was like trying to like go cold turkey and I didn't have really other things in place. And while I've done some experimenting over the last 2 or 3 years, there could be way more intentionality there, which is what I'm hoping for now. But I didn't really come to any kind of solution. So I would just go back to the coping mechanism that I was previously using, which was shopping. And this past October was really my wake-up call. I went through a really, really rough time in September and October. We're not going to get into it, but it was bad. It was very bad. And I stress shopped. Like, it was at least a minimum of $500. I think it was more, but I wasn't tracking anything because I didn't want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't care at that point. I also, I did 90% of my shopping on Poshmark, and I bought a couple of things from other stores, but I did actually return everything that wasn't Poshmark, which, good. I'm happy, but you can't return the Poshmark stuff, which is often why I shop on Poshmark. It's like a self-destructive behavior, because if you make some of these mistakes on almost any store, even if you have to pay for return shipping, you can still return it. You can on Poshmark, so it's a very self-sabotaging behavior. And I really spiraled here. It started off with one purchase, and then it kept going. And my two biggest issues are Poshmark and spiraling. Usually one purchase, coping mechanism style purchase, will lead to another one. It almost always will lead to a spiral, and that's kind of the problem, is I won't do it for months of the year, and then it'll just be that one time where I can't deal with it anymore, and then I'll make that one purchase, and then it just goes, and then it's $500 later or $1,000 later. And I've had some bad ones over the last 3 years. My most expensive one, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just not going to go there. And I'm still kind of embarrassed about it. It was just over $1,000. That's all we'll go to. I've just, I've known about it, but I haven't really done much about it. And the October was my wake-up call, because it happened, and I knew it was happening while I was doing it. And I didn't care. It was well, not I didn't care, because I knew it was a destructive habit, and I was letting those destructive thoughts win. Yeah, you're bad at making choices. You don't deserve money. You don't deserve financial freedom. You're a shitty person. I let all the narratives kind of win out in my head, and that's often what happens. And while I haven't gone into debt, it has really hindered my ability to save money. And that's one of the really big solid reasons why I want to take care of this problem, is because I do have financial goals, and if I want to be serious about them, I have to change this habit. This is the worst shopping habit that I currently have, and it's time to do something about it instead of just giving myself a pass. And once the incident in October happened, I was like, you know what? It's finally time to start doing something about it. We'll tackle it once I'm in a better emotional state. I am now. So now is the time to really start getting into those good habits and preparing for those times where you do fall into those occasions or those mental spaces or those stress spaces where you would typically go to shop. Now is the time to prepare for that. Give myself resources, so when that time comes, I'm not just, gonna fall back in. So this really begs the question, what's the plan? What am I gonna do about it? So my plan is threefold. The first is to build momentum with my budget, create distraction projects, and then lastly, swap out habits. So I'm going to explain these just a little bit more, and we'll start with the budget. I have been following a budget for every part of my life since January. Or what I really mean is every category that I would spend money on, from, food to skincare, it's all kind of been accounted for. I've been following that. We're at about 6 weeks now, roughly 40 days. That has been going swimmingly. I have made mistakes, and I've kind of enjoyed that, actually, because mistakes are our best opportunities to learn. And when we're perfect our whole lives, do we really learn anything? I don't know. I really embrace the mistakes, and I kind of get excited because I'm ooh, how could I change this? How could I improve? Very different mental space from a couple years ago. So I've been inputting all my expenses. I've kept up with that for a couple weeks now. And since we closed out January, I was able to put away my savings for January, which were actually double than what I had planned. And it wasn't as though I got the math wrong. I just actually did better financially in some areas than I could have predicted. So I was able to save double, and it was like a freaking high, guys. I was like walking around like, who the financial queen I am, like I love that energy. And so it's kind of, I've been riding that high for over a week now, and it's really been helping me say no to stuff and really reined in my budget. And when I was planning Low by Bingo, I was like, I had things that I wanted initially, but then once it came time to get down and film the video, I was struggling to find things to put on there because I had just done my budget and I was like, I don't need anything. Like, I don't need anything. I'm good. Anyways, was so motivating to have that moment and to transfer that money and, have that account grow, hopefully. So I'm really, really hoping that sticking with my budget and learning and having that process of transferring that money and, tracking everything is going to be something that will help with that momentum to incentivize me to save money, to not buy stuff. That's number one. I'm also going to be creating like an emergency plan, when we get to those moments that will inevitably rise where, I'm in that vulnerable place where shopping happens. One of the things I want to put in my emergency kit is a reminder of, do you want to put away $0 this month? Do you want to have to take away from your savings because you spent money? Like, I want to put in some kind of messaging like that because, that's the last line of defense before we make a mistake is, I personally believe in taking willpower out of the equation as much as possible, which is what I want to do. And when I get to that point, willpower is going to be at its lowest. And so creating that why, or putting in that why in like an emergency space to really be honest and, firm with myself that, listen, if you give in now, you could potentially be destroying your savings for the month. So all the hard work that you've built up over the last month is going to just go out the window. Or it could even be worse, and I could be forced to take out money from my savings account to pay for whatever I'm about to buy. I don't know if that will work, and if it does work, will it overall have a negative or positive consequence? But I'm willing to go there. Kind of like desperate times coupled with desperate measures. If it's truly destructive to my mental health to do that, then I will not. But I think it's worth at least a shot. The second part of the budgeting strategy is Low by Bingo, which is a for fun money budget, and it's intended to be spent. It's not intended to be saved. So if I spend every dollar in every Low by Bingo, that's fine. Like, it's meant to be spent. But also, if I destructively spend, I can take out Low by Bingo money and apply it to there. So there's kind of like a safety net, which would also mean that I wouldn't get to see the fruits of my labor from Low by Bingo, which again, hopefully knowing that might alter my choices. We don't know yet. It would really be a shame to work so hard for 6 weeks and really painstakingly work towards that money only to have that kind of cancel out because I decided to go on some kind of shopping binge. I'm also hoping that by having some money to play with will allow me to prioritize things so I can buy clothing items that I would want to buy without going overboard. And, because it's Low by Bingo and I have to wait till the end of the bingo period or to buy something, I'm hoping that that's going to force a waiting period on me and then also force prioritization. That's the goal. So I won't be spending money that I don't have on Low by Bingo. And, I'm hoping that the effects will be good. We'll see. And, going on a year-long no-buy for clothes is just not practical for me. And that's what I kind of mean by taking my own advice. I'm not cold turkeying this thing. I know what that's done for my shopping, particularly clothing shopping in the past. So we're just kind of taking a little bit of a gentler approach. I truly believe in my heart and in my head that progress, even 10, 20, 30% is better than no progress at all. So if I could stick to these things, even a slip up or two, are we headed in the right direction? That's what really matters. The second part of the plan is the distraction project, or will be distraction projects. And I have some clothing specific distraction projects as well as others that aren't about clothes. and will hopefully take my mind off of it and give me things to do and things to channel my time and energy into that I would otherwise be channeling into shopping and scrolling, etc., etc. Now, the first distraction project, which I think I was thinking maybe just to do this in February, but I decided on another one. I'll tell you what that is in just a second. But I will be doing the curated closet at one point, and I'm hoping that doing that project will just be fun and a way to put time and energy into my clothing that is fun, and hopefully I will learn something from it and then can apply it to my life without buying anything. I'm really crossing my fingers for that, and I think I'll probably document it on YouTube at some point when I do it, but I'm kind of excited about that. The other distraction project that I'm working on right now is The Artist's Way. That one has nothing to do with clothing. And I've really found in my own experience that taking your attention away from whatever you're trying to change is just a really good use of time, because it's kind of like a habit swap. You're replacing one thing for another. You want to stop doing this, so I'm going to do this instead. And what this is instead is something not related to what I'm trying to change. So it's also channeling my energy and my thoughts into something else. I also feel like when I'm happier with myself and my life, I'm not prone to that critical thinking of like, oh, my clothes aren't good enough, or like my wardrobe isn't good enough. And lately, just being busier, but also overall happier, I haven't really thought about my clothes all that much, and it hasn't been that way for a while, and I've been kind of loving it. So The Artist's Way, I'm hoping to kind of document my process or progress with it over the next couple of months, and that's going to be a really exciting project. And it also is something that's intended to, nourish your soul and hopefully ignite passion in my life in new and interesting ways that I haven't maybe ever had. And I think that's a really, really amazing thing to do, like to ignite your creativity. The other thing that's also kind of fashion specific, one of the prompts on the bingo board was to create this kind of fashion prompt list. I'm looking at it now. Oh, it's called a fashion prompt list. That's what I called it. And I'm going to be working on that soon. And it's just, it doesn't have to be fashion, but it's a way to think about getting ready in the morning. It could be beauty or fashion accessory focused. And it's just a way to channel specificity and intentionality into how you get dressed and decide to show up every day. So I'll share that list with you when I create it. Some things will be really specific, like your least worn clothing item, or maybe like something blue, but also it could be words like artistic or fierce or something like that. But also it could be like a journaling prompt, like how do I want to show up in the world? Like what does my best foot forward look like? And I can answer with a piece of clothing or an outfit. And one of the things that I think might be interesting too is just giving myself scenarios like first date outfit. Of course, I'm not going on a first date. I'm in a relationship happily. But I think it's just interesting to think about those exercises of like, what would I wear to this? And I love that kind of challenge, but then not just making it this theoretical challenge or maybe just putting it on for like a video, actually wearing it in life and kind of seeing how I feel about it. That actually excites me. There's a video that never went up on the channel, never made it. It was creating outfits inspired by Taylor Swift's new album Midnight. It's not new anymore, but at the time I went that weekend and was working on it. That never made it anywhere, and I kind of like the idea of making outfits inspired by songs or albums, which would be fun too. The last thing I want to say about distraction projects is that my experience has told me is that when you can make doing a thing fun, a habit you want to change, when you can make it fun and exciting, you're more inclined to follow through with it. James Clear also says that in Atomic Habits. This is something that I learned by experience, and then once I read Atomic Habits, I just felt so validated in that experience. And so I take that wisdom with me wherever I go in whatever habit I want to change. And so while spending less money on clothes is kind of a macro level habit, there are ways to make not spending money on clothes fun and exciting, and this is one of the ways to do that. the last thing, which are changing habits, this one is the most like relevant, on point, and also difficult, the most difficult part of what I'm asking myself to do. So what I'm really asking is, when I'm feeling in this vulnerable place, in this emotional stress kind of place, what do I do instead? I have dabbled with alternatives. I've dabbled with journaling, art journaling, listening to music. And the reason why I haven't experienced success with this is because all of those strategies involve dealing with your emotion or letting yourself feel the feels right when you're at the pinnacle of vulnerability. That doesn't work for me because I am usually not ready to feel the feelings at that point. I often inevitably feel them, but not at that moment. So what I really need are alternative things I could do to spending money and shopping that also function as distractions. Going out for a walk usually ain't it, because when I feel like shit, I don't want to do that, even emotionally. Like, I'm feeling like unemotional. You know what I mean? So the first order of business, I think, is to create a list of distraction activities that I can do when I'm feeling that way that don't involve spending any money, or shopping online, I should say. And also being very specific about that list, not watch a show, but like, these are the shows to watch, and then create a file on my computer for shows that I can go to. I'm thinking like The Office season. I haven't watched season 1 in a while, and I did watch it recently back in October, and I forgot how good it was. So maybe I'll just start with my Old Faithful season 2, or start with a favorite episode. Everybody Loves Raymond probably would be on there. Maybe my favorite books. I think honestly it could be worth buying A Court of Thorns and Roses with me. I do have like electronic copies, but they're from my library. It's like they expire. So I think it could be worth buying them to own them so I could go to them when I feel garbagey. I feel like that could be... I'm looking at my bookshelf now. Sorry. I do actually have a favorite series that I read as a youth. I still love that series, and I think it's been a while since I've read it, so maybe that could be on the list. It's here, I can grab it, like read in case of an emergency kind of thing. I want to have a handful of activities that are very specific, and also want to make doing them as easy as possible. I'm going to look into alternatives, and I know I've done this before. Maybe even like doing a little press-on nail moment. I feel uplifted now, but I do have some. I still have 3 or 4 pairs, so I could do it literally at any time, and I don't go through them more than once a month. So conceivably, if I have 3 pairs left, that's 3 more months from now. So I could use one every month between now and like May. A piece of advice James Clear also gives when talking about changing habits is, how do you make doing the desired action as easy as possible? How can you, cut down any of the steps? How do you make going from point A to point B as easy and as simple as possible? So that's going to be the mindset I bring to creating my list. And then I'm going to put my list maybe on the fridge, or probably on my fridge actually. And then when I need it, it'll be right there to consult. There's a chance that I would be like really lazy and just be like, no, I'm not going to leave my bed. I'm not going to move. My partner also usually will be like, hey, like I'll come over, like let's spend some time together. And I usually say no, because I feel bad that like he is dropping what he's doing to make me feel better when I know he has some really important deadlines coming up. And that's been the case previously as well. So maybe I just say yes. Like, I don't want to be selfish and say yes, and I feel terrible when, at least initially, but seeing him, even if we're just like hanging out together, it usually cheers me up. Maybe I just need to remember that too. Like, say yes. Just say yes. So that's my plan of action. That's how I'm hoping to tackle this problem area. Would you like an update in a handful of months? Like, okay, I, try this out for 3 months. What worked, what didn't? I would love to know your thoughts. And if you would like to see that video, I don't know what the next 2 or 3 months would look like. Nothing might happen. Something might happen. I might go to these techniques once. I really don't know. So I guess we'll have to see. And if you're also planning on tackling one of your shopping, spending problem areas, what's yours and how are you going to be working on it? I would really love to know what your strategies are in the comments down below. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.